Why? The US and Israel target Iran. To understand any direct military action against Iran, we must first understand the long-standing tensions behind it. At the core of the conflict lies Iran's nuclear program. Israel has consistently viewed Iran's potential acquisition of nuclear weapons as an existential threat. Iranian leaders have repeatedly criticized Israel's legitimacy, while Israel has made it clear that it will not allow Iran to develop nuclear weapons capability. The United States shares similar concerns, though its strategy has historically fluctuated between diplomacy, sanctions, and military deterrence. Over the years, economic sanctions were imposed to pressure Iran into limiting uranium enrichment. Negotiations aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear ambitions have seen periods of success and collapse. But nuclear capability is only one part of the equation. Iran has built a powerful network of regional allies and proxy groups across the Middle East. These groups operate in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. From Israel's perspective, this creates a ring of hostile forces armed with missiles and drones capable of striking Israeli territory. In addition, Iran has significantly advanced its ballistic missile and drone technology. Long-range missiles, precision-guided systems, and increasingly sophisticated unmanned aerial vehicles have altered the military balance in the region. For Israel, the strategic calculation is simple. Waiting could mean facing a stronger, more fortified adversary later. For the United States, concerns go beyond Israel's security. Iran's influence threatens American allies in the Gulf region and challenges US military presence in strategic waterways such as the Persian Gulf. Another critical factor is deterrence. If Iran crosses certain red lines, whether nuclear enrichment thresholds or direct attacks through proxies, both Washington and Tel Aviv may calculate that military action is necessary to restore deterrence. In such a scenario, a coordinated strike would likely aim to degrade Iran's nuclear infrastructure, missile facilities, command centers, and military assets. But striking Iran is not like striking a smaller regional actor. Iran is geographically vast, militarily experienced, and deeply embedded in regional networks. Any attack would not be a simple operation. It would be the opening move in a potentially prolonged and dangerous confrontation. The strike and Iran's response? Escalation begins. If the United States and Israel were to conduct coordinated strikes against Iran, the operation would likely involve precision airstrikes, cyber warfare, intelligence-driven targeting, and potentially naval deployments. Israel's air force is among the most advanced in the world, capable of long-range precision operations. The United States possesses unmatched capabilities in stealth bombers, cruise missiles, carrier strike groups, and electronic warfare systems. Initial targets would likely include nuclear enrichment facilities, missile production sites, air defense systems, Revolutionary Guard infrastructure, strategic command, and communication hubs. The goal would not necessarily be regime change, but rather strategic degradation, weakening Iran's ability to threaten Israel or rapidly advance its nuclear program. However, Iran's response would almost certainly be swift and multifaceted. Iran has developed a strategy based on asymmetrical warfare. Instead of relying solely on conventional military strength, it leverages missile barrages, drone swarms, naval disruption tactics, and proxy groups across the region. Possible Iranian responses could include ballistic missile strikes on Israeli cities, drone attacks on US military bases in the Gulf, mobilization of allied militias in Lebanon or Iraq, disruption of shipping routes, cyber attacks targeting infrastructure. One of the most significant risks would be the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow but critical waterway through which a large portion of the world's oil supply passes. Any attempt to block or disrupt this route would immediately affect global energy markets. Additionally, Hezbollah in Lebanon could open a northern front against Israel, launching rockets that overwhelm air defense systems. At that point, the conflict would no longer be limited to 2 or 3 actors. It would expand into a regional war. Air defense systems would intercept some missiles. Others would land. Civilian populations on all sides would experience fear, sirens, and uncertainty. The speed of escalation in modern warfare is unprecedented. Drones can travel hundreds of miles in hours. Missiles can strike within minutes. And once the first wave of retaliation begins, the pressure to respond even more forcefully grows stronger. That's how localized strikes can transform into prolonged conflict. But the consequences would not stop at the battlefield. Global impact. What this means for the world. A direct US-Israel attack on Iran would not remain confined to the Middle East. The global consequences would be immediate and far-reaching. First, energy markets. Any threat to oil production or transport in the Gulf region would cause oil prices to surge. Higher energy costs would impact inflation, transportation, food prices, and global economic stability. Second, international alliances would be tested. Western allies might support Israel's right to self-defense, while other global powers could condemn the strikes as destabilizing. Diplomatic divisions would widen at the United Nations and other global forums. Third, military readiness worldwide would increase. Countries across the region would activate air defenses, secure borders, and prepare for potential spillover. International shipping companies might reroute vessels, increasing costs and delays. Fourth, cyber warfare could intensify. Modern conflicts extend beyond physical battlefields. Power grids, financial systems, communication networks, all could become targets in retaliatory cyber campaigns. Fifth, the humanitarian impact. Wars in the Middle East historically produce displacement, refugee flows, and civilian suffering. Even precision strikes carry unintended consequences. And perhaps the most dangerous possibility, miscalculation. In high-tension environments, a single misinterpreted signal, accidental strike, or intelligence error can trigger broader escalation. That is why military planners and political leaders tread carefully. The cost of direct war between powerful regional actors is immense. At the same time, deterrence theory argues that failing to respond to perceived threats can embolden adversaries. This balance between action and restraint defines the strategic dilemma facing decision-makers. In the end, a US-Israel strike on Iran would represent more than a military operation. It would signal a fundamental shift in Middle Eastern power dynamics and potentially reshape global security architecture. The tension between the United States, Israel, and Iran is not a sudden development. It is the result of decades of strategic rivalry, nuclear concerns, regional competition, and deep political mistrust. Any direct military confrontation between these powers would carry consequences far beyond the initial strikes. Retaliation could trigger rapid escalation, pulling in regional allies and expanding the conflict zone. Energy markets would react immediately. Global political divisions would sharpen. Military forces across the region would move to high alert. In today's interconnected world, even a limited war in the Middle East can send shockwaves across continents. In the end, this situation is not only about military strength, it is about strategic restraint, diplomacy, and the balance of power. The choices made in such critical moments do not just shape one nation's future, they can redefine regional stability and global security for years to come.